Kukakuka. Discussions on topics affecting Hawaii's youth, ohana, and community.
Aloha mai kako, and welcome once again to another segment of Kukakuka. I am your host, Venus Rossetti Medeiros, and I am the CEO and president of Hale Kipa. And today we're going to be talking about the impact of homelessness upon our young people here in Hawaii. And with me today, I have three wonderful guests who have been actively working to help resolve our issues around homelessness with our young people. I have Alika Campbell.
Hello. From
Hale Kipa, Yo program, which is youth outreach. Also have Carla Hauser with RISE, and Lindsay Ann Pacheco with the Governor's Office of Homelessness. So mahalo, all three of you, for being here today to share your mana'o with us. And so I'm going to start off with Alika. So Alika, can you share with us what are you doing as part of youth outreach? What is Yo?
Okay, so youth outreach, Yo for short, is a collaboration between Hale Kipa and Waikiki Health. We're a program that works with runaway, homeless, street identified youth and young adults up to the age of 22. There's two main components to the program. We do street outreach, and we have a drop-in center located in Waikiki. Yo's been going since 1989.
Wow.
And we also do additional services for folks who want it, case management. We have a little bit of a pre-employment training program. We have a online GED education program that folks can participate in. So we try to be as much of a one-stop shop for basic needs as we can.
Perfect. And now, you said you also partner with Waikiki Health.
Yes.
So what role does Waikiki Health play?
So at our drop-in center, as part of drop-in, we have a small medical clinic, essentially a satellite clinic of Waikiki Health. So during drop-in, the youth, young adults can access primary medical care, pretty much staples and stitches on down, as well as shots, TB tests, that sort of stuff, birth control, some prescription, that sort of thing. And then Waikiki Health also has a dental clinic, not on site, but we have one of the dental hygienists over twice a month. She does dental screening for anyone, and then can get referred over to the main clinic for, further dental care. And they also have a mental health provider who comes in one day a week, once a week, to do. We don't call it therapy because they won't go. We call it therapy. Right. So it's Talk Story Clinic.
Yeah, Talk Story.
So it's Talk Story with Amy on Fridays.
So I know that you mentioned we also partner with RISE. So I want to hold off a little bit because we are going to get to Carla. But I wanted to ask you, what are some of the trends? What are you seeing right now with our young people?
So Yo's been going since 1989. I've been there since 1997. So I kind of have maybe the long view. And a lot of it's kind of the same stuff.
Which is what?
Some of it is youth, young adults that get kicked out. It's a terrible term, but they're throwaway youth if they didn't actually run away. And historically, if you ran away from home or got kicked out and you weren't staying with auntie or uncle or crashed on a friend's couch, you kind of came into town. Not a lot to do out in the suburbs, and so Waikiki was sort of a natural gathering area, and that's why Yo is there in Waikiki. And there's a lot of substance use, a lot of histories of abuse and neglect, intergenerational poverty. Some folks feel safer on the streets than they do at home, and we really try to sort of meet them where they're at, provide basic needs services, and maybe try to be that bridge to get them reconnected back to other resources.
Well, what a great resource for us, right? For our young people. And how do our young people come to you? Do they know about Yo, or is it just through our outreach going out and finding them?
Well, since Yo's been going since '89, we have some pretty good word of mouth out on the streets. So we do outreach island-wide in a collaboration with RISE and another agency. And we also do our own sort of separate YO outreach. But a lot of folks kind of get referred by other youth and young adults. As I say, we have kind of a long track record. And when we're doing outreach, we're also interacting with some of the older folks and saying, hey, you know, you're too old for our services, but if you see the youth, young adults, let them know about us. And so we call them gatekeepers. And so we have some strong relationship with some of the gatekeepers out on the streets. And so if we don't find them, other youth will bring them in, or the gatekeepers will refer them, that sort of stuff.
That's great. It's like, you know, it sounds like the gatekeepers actually have built a trusting relationship, right, with YO in order to refer them over. So that's great. We call that pilina, right? Building that pilina out in the community. Now, Carla Hauser, our executive director of RISE. Can you share a little bit about RISE and what do you guys do?
Yeah, you know, we really grew everything that I learned in my social work life around youth homelessness actually came from this man right here. And really RISE grew out of the need for shelter. We're very much of the philosophy that housing is a human right, and there really is no safe level of homelessness for children. And that guiding principle is really what allowed us to really explore initially was, you know, we wanted to create someplace safe. You know, there are adult shelters that provide emergency beds, but it's not really developmentally appropriate for our young people. And so we're able to really run a very youth-specific program and really try to meet all the developmental needs of where our young people are. So much like YO, we have the education and employment component, very, very strong in the mental health now. That's really what we're seeing the most. And then really we're the stewards of a lot of federal dollars that come through the Youth Homeless Demonstration Project. And that allows us to kind of be the hub for a number of different housing subsidies that allows young people to attempt to be living independently or in some sort of transitional housing program. So
nice to know that they have somewhere safe to go to. Now, what ages do you work with, Carla?
We work with 14 to 24-year-olds. Our age range aligns with HUD definition, and so in our emergency shelter we see 18 to 24-year-olds, and then we have special drop-in hours for our unaccompanied minors that we encounter. And you know, it's a challenge for sure when you look at where we're located. You know, we are on the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility campus. We're a mile from the nearest bus stop, very unlike Waikiki, yet we still have young people that are really committed to ending their homelessness, and they make that venture into Kailua and really start that process. So as long as they are working to end their homelessness, you know, we tend to walk alongside them in the journey and really give them an opportunity to hope and dream of what their life really looks like. But, you know, to Alika's point, many of our young people have experienced adverse childhood experiences. And so when they're out there on the streets, when they don't have safety, they're going to constantly be in that fight or flight. And everything is about survival in that moment. I'm going to do whatever I need to in exchange for a safe place. And so when you remove them from that environment and you bring them into a nurturing, caring home, that's when the healing really starts. They can look around, see other people, be supported by adults 24/7. And really it's a lot of fun to watch them thrive once they get to that place of safety.
It's great. So so RISE really does a wraparound service for these young people, right?
Yes.
And Alika, you mentioned that you partner with RISE, so I imagine there's probably some youth there that want to have shelter, that they're tired of being houseless or and end up with RISE.
Yeah, so historically, prior to RISE's opening the shelter, the 18 to 24-year-olds could go to the adult service providers for shelter, but they rarely ever did.
Right.
Because it doesn't feel safe, it's not comfortable, it's all these old people, And so we definitely refer any number of folks over to
Right.
RISE.
Yeah.
Right.
Carla mentioned the federal dollars. It's a youth demonstration grant funded by HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and we're partners in that on a mobile crisis outreach program.
I'm so glad that we're tapping into those federal dollars, right?
Yep.
Because we've been told so many times that Hawaii does not access the federal funds that's available to us. So this is great. I want to ask, excuse me, Carla, one more thing. What are some of the trends you're seeing at RISE?
Disproportionate rates of Native Hawaiian, Pacific Island youth of color in every negative statistic that you can imagine. Also seeing a lot of young people who are facing incarceration and justice-involved youth. And so a lot of our effort currently is going into this idea that we want to be able to create a more therapeutic, culturally centered approach for our justice-involved youth. And we're really fortunate that we have some good buy-in right now from the judiciary that is allowing us to be someplace outside of OCCC where youth can come and you know, for most of them, they're crimes of poverty, you know, sleeping in the park, shoplifting. And so we want to believe that we can create a more healing environment than sitting in an adult prison learning how to be a better adult criminal. You know, we want to continue to build on that, you know, for our young people. We're able to help with court fines and fees, much in the same way that we would do for our own children as parents. And so really just trying to be that supportive adult for them in their journey. And so, you know, we rely heavily on our partnerships with Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, with the YO team. So it really is about a network of providers that work very, very well together. I think we all know, you know, the same 300 young people that we consistently see annually. So,
right, right. So I'm glad you mentioned that about, you know, there's a lot, well, not that I'm glad that there is a lot of Native Hawaiian and, you know, Polynesian, Micronesian, Melanesian, you know, young people in the system of homelessness, but the fact that it kind of demystifies, right, the myths of that all of the young people are coming from the mainland and they're like taking up our resources here in Hawaii, right? When so many of our houseless young people are local.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And when you say throwaway youth, I mean that just right?
It's an ugly term.
Yes.
Yeah, but in essence, I can imagine that's how they feel, right?
Yeah, when they're in that age of adolescence, they're not really, this is a time of exploration.
Right.
And so most 18, 19-year-olds aren't ready for a full-time career in a job, or let alone a job that's going to pay them a living wage. And so that's the greatest challenge, and I often like to put it back to people that where does a young person who's making $12 an hour, usually part-time, how do they afford to live in Hawaii without the right supports, without you know, that community wraparound support? Many of these young people, as Alika said, they have been kicked out of the system, they've been kicked out of their family homes, and so then they're left to their own devices to figure it out. And it's a big challenge for us, but we're really committed to continuing to build that developmentally appropriate, affordable housing model, and making sure that we have different types of housing for different types of youth, whether it's clean and sober, maybe it's for our youth with serious mental illness. None of these programs have existed in the past, and so to now be able to have a menu of housing options is really the direction we want to get to. We want to see functional zero. 300
And you know
beds.
what? I gotta give a shout out to nonprofit organizations, so our community-based organizations that's taking this, right, and really looking at how we can solve this issue. And like you said, never before has it happened, right? And then to hear that some of our young people are not welcome in some of the housing places in the community. So yeah, so they're out in Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility, right? But why not? You know, community, why are our young people not being welcomed in our own communities? This is all of our issue, not just Rises, not just Hale Kipas, right? This is all of our issue. Lindsay Ann Pacheco. This is a great way to segue into the Office of the Governor Homeless Programs. Can you share with us what our state is doing to address this?
Oh, that's a loaded question. You know that, right? Well, I can speak for our office, and from what from what we are currently trying to do is we are currently focused on 5 priorities that my boss, James Koshiba, the Gov's coordinator on homeless, had managed to work with Gov on trying to set up, get set in place and work on as priorities for our office during this administration. And those top 5 priorities are 3 of them have to do with clearing space, clearing way, making space for more places, more developments, more housing to be created and implemented for both, not just our youth, but adults as well, for our entire homeless population, really. And 2, the priorities number 4 and 5 are focused on clearing the way and making sure that our systems, because we notice that there's a lot of gaps within our system and that need to be corrected. And that's actually what my task is in the office, is trying to identify what is broken, what needs to be fixed, how can we fix it, what needs to be addressed. Is it funding? Is it resources? What needs to be increased? What needs to be taken away? What needs to be connected and put together? And a lot of it has to do with working with providers such as Rise and Yo and Hale Kipa, and trying to get those dots connected and realizing that we all need each other, that we need to depend on each other, even as a state, in order to solve this. Because really, we can't solve there's not one organization is going to be able to solve homelessness on its own. We need to do it collectively. We need to do it together as an entire state, as one unity, as one community.
I love getting to hear that coming from our state office. And Lindsay, I was in a meeting with Lindsay, and I was learning so much from her and her own life experiences. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what you've learned?
Through my experiences?
Yeah.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Let me, so that people understand my life experience. I actually come with 7 years of lived experience, meaning I was homeless in the Kukakuka Park for a great 7 years. But prior to that, as a youth, I was also a homeless youth as well. So I'm very familiar with Hale Kipa's services. I'm very familiar with Yo. And in fact, I've known Alika since I was yay high. So, these people in my life, these mentors, these moments, these programs that have actually helped me and shaped me into what I've become now. When I was homeless for 7 years, I was really strung out on drugs and didn't really give too much of a care. But, the one thing that did make a impact on me is the homeless youth that are out there on the streets. It was sad. I had experiences where I've had youth literally come up to me, Auntie, you get on pipe. And I'm like, how old are you?
Wow.
And it's really heartbreaking, because it's like, it's almost like my own children asking me. And it's like, I would never, ever, ever allow my children, to even get close to any kind of, substance on the streets. But it's that right there that has helped me to become who I am now. I am on a first housing voucher, so I have been housed now for the last 3 years. And in getting housed, I was able to get back into college, get clean and sober, graduated with an associate's, and now I'm working on my bachelor's in social work. I'm trying to shoot for the stars, hopefully graduate by next fall, so I can I'll have my bachelor's, work on my master's, my LCSW, DSW, the full works. But my ultimate goal is to eventually collaborate with all these youth programs, because I do want to open up a substance use facility that's in the urban Honolulu for our adolescent youth, one that's family focused and culturally based. So that way people have a sense of who they are, and you know, a chance, a better chance at life than what we are, you know, what is out there right now. You know, we got to keep pushing forward, keep doing what we're doing, keep doing the great work that we're trying to do, and let it grow.
Well, I am so appreciative of James Koshiba for hiring you to be a part of his office, because with those lived experience years that you bring, you know, is priceless, right? To help in this this situation here that we have in Hawaii. Now, Carla, you mentioned adverse childhood experiences earlier. And a lot of times people who don't understand like homelessness or houselessness, right? They make up stuff, right? They must be just drug addicts and, you know, good for them. They deserve to be homeless and, you know, and or get a job. You hear people yelling out the windows, you know, on the streets, get a job. You know, people don't understand that these are good people, right? And sometimes in life, right, you get given the short end of the stick and you have some traumatic experiences that'll take you there if it's not treated, right? Mental health, substance abuse, a means of coping, right, with some of those adverse childhood experiences. Any of you want to shed some light on that and some of the things that you've learned and how you've dealt with that?
Well, it makes me really happy to hear Lindsay talk about the stabilization, the detox beds, right? That is still missing in our continuum. We have a lot of young people that are just starting their journey with mental illness. And I do want to make sure that we acknowledge the families. Oftentimes, when they are making the decision to ask their youth to leave the home, it's usually because it's no longer safe. And they have not, the families have not been taught the tools yet on how to cope with this young person who, early adolescence, this is when we start to see the onset of a lot of serious mental illness, a lot of, you know, chronic substance use. This is what we're starting to see. And the parents oftentimes are at the end of their rope. They have no other choice. There's family and younger siblings in the house. So it's not every parent is just kicking their kids out, right? And that's, but that piece that's still missing is the stabilization and the substance use beds, in particular for our adolescents. You know, that we can put them into housing, they will stop taking their medication, then they'll decompensate, and rather than kicking them out or having them, you know, be evicted from a house, it would be really great if we could put them someplace to allow them to get back on their medication, restabilize, and put back into their housing, so that we don't go through these periods of unsheltered homelessness back out on the streets, re-traumatizing them. So that's something I think that our continuum is still really working towards. We need treatment on demand for young people. When they are truly ready to stop, they can't make a phone call 3 times in 3 consecutive days, and then we'll see if you're really serious about it. We want to be able to, while they're asking and they're hungry for it, to get them in that care that they need.
Which is really great that you're trying to build that within RISE, right? So the resource is right there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know. I would love to see what the plan is in regards to some kind of substance abuse, you know, shelter for our young people. Yeah, that would be great. Now, what is a percentage you feel of young people coming through that actually have a substance abuse problem?
Substance abuse problem or substance use? Because those are two different things. So, conservatively?
Define that for us, Alika.
I would say conservatively, pretty much everybody I know is using some sort of substance. Weed and alcohol are kind of like air and water out on the streets. And there's a number of factors that go into that. One is just sort of normal adolescent developmental experimentation. One is coping with all of the stresses and the traumas of life on the street. And some of it is self-medication for the, you know, as Carla mentioned, the onset of some of the serious mental health issues. And so at Yo, we kind of try to talk about there's use and then there's abuse. And somewhere there's a line. And when your use gets in the way of your daily functioning and what you want to accomplish. That's maybe where the line of abuse is. We're not substance abuse counselors. We're not trained for that. And so it's a very kind of vague and squishy thing. But yeah, I would say almost everybody's using something, but a much smaller percentage. But it's meaningful. I mean, the ones that are stuck in the abuse cycle, they absolutely need treatment on demand. They need not just clean and sober housing, but moist housing. They need sort of a whole continuum of care for themselves where they can make mistakes and not end up back on the streets, you know. And I think that's missing for substance abuse as well as just youth and young adults in general.
In general, right.
Yeah, fail. First attempt in learning. That's what we say failure is at RISE. So,
Oh, that's a good one.
yeah, you know, young people, this is what they do in adolescence. They're exploring and just want to be here. Okay, what did we learn? You know, in those conversations. What do you want to not do the next time? But, you know, at RISE, being clean and sober is not part of the program. It's what are you doing to end your homelessness? When your substance use starts to impede on that ability to end your homelessness, now we provide you with some choice, right?
So where do you send them if they're like, they're abusing now, right? You see how it's starting to impede, how it's, you know, preventing them from reaching their goals. What are resources out there?
You want to speak to those?
From the youth's perspective, there isn't much. What is out there is a lot of outpatient. There's one residential treatment facility here in the state. That would be Bobby Benson. And I believe they are limited to the amount of youth that they can take at a time. I'm not familiar with how their program runs or the length of stay, but from what I understand, I mean, even when I was a youth and actively using, I couldn't even get in there. And that's, you know, that tells you how limited resources we actually have. We do have quite, you know, some outpatient. I believe Hinamauka has an outpatient program, and I think Salvation Army, I could be wrong, but there's not that many, and that's why there is a high need and a high demand for more facilities and more options for our youth to get connected. You know, the biggest thing that they could possibly get connected to, from my understanding, is at least NA and AA meetings. But that is like at the bare minimum. That's not treatment. That's, you know, that's connecting with other folks who have been in your situation, you know, like lived experiences or peer support. But I think that, you know, if we can create more spaces and implement programs in these spaces to allow folks to you know, to allow youth to actually come and get treatment, that's what's needed.
Now, we've been primarily speaking about Oahu, but we also know statewide, this is an issue statewide,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What are some of the resources statewide that on the other islands?
They're really, as far as substance abuse, it's very minimal. A lot of our substance use treatment programs are here. I believe Big Island has one, which is the BISAC. And I think that's it. If I remember correctly, I think that's it. That's the thing about our outer islands. There's not that many options, and that, as a state, is something that we also need to continue to address and work on. You know, not just, we tend to put a lot of our focus here because Oahu is so populated. It's highly populated, and the problems here are prevalent. You can see it. It's just everywhere. But we, you know, don't focus much on the outer islands, not realizing or remembering that, you know, they have issues also.
Absolutely. I'm from Maui. Yeah, I know. You know, it would be great to have some equity across our state, but also it would be great to look at a smaller island if we wanted to pilot something and test it out, right, to see if it works.
So Kipa is involved in a multi-island collaboration under the Hawaii Youth Services Network. We get some federal money from the Federal Youth Services Bureau, FISB, and to do street outreach. And so the vast majority of the money comes to YO, but there's Maui Youth and Family Services does a little bit. They have, I believe they have a couple of emergency shelter beds on Maui for youth, young adults. I think it's Family Support Services on West Hawaii. And, is it Haleopio on Kauai? I never remember who it is on Kauai. But they're very small, and they certainly don't get probably as much resources as they need.
Now, do you get referrals from the other islands?
Sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, all the time. We'll get young people that are, the lights are bigger on Oahu,
Right.
and if
Yeah.
you're going to come and you want to enjoy, the light and running around and having a lot of freedom, Oahu is the place that they'll come.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier also about mainland folks. So historically, based on 20, however many years at Yo, historically we would see probably about 85% of everybody we saw in a year was local Oahu residents. And then the remaining 15% was pretty evenly split between neighbor island folks and folks from the mainland. Every now and then we get some international folks. They'd come to Hawaii, think, oh, hey, I'm going to live on the beach and pick fruit from the trees. And they get to Waikiki and be like,
Not so livable like that.
But that changed after the September 11th terrorist attacks, when it got much harder to travel. And so now I would say we're probably closer to 90% Oahu residents. And then, yeah, some of the neighbor island folks and less of the mainland.
Now, outreach, you said that primarily Waikiki, and where else are you going? Where are our young people
Island-wide.
congregating?
Yeah. So historically, Yo has been sort of focused on Waikiki, downtown, Kukakuka, Chinatown, kind of surrounding area, because we're based in Waikiki. We've done outreach island-wide over the years. When we're out in sort of the rural communities, it doesn't make a lot of sense to say, hey, youth, young adult at Waianae Boat Harbor, come to Waikiki for free lunch. So when we're out there, we're trying to connect them to the resources out in those communities. And over the last, it's been 3 years now, we've had this, the YHDP funded MCO, which is an island-wide effort, and Carla can tell you more about that.
Yeah, we're trying to be in Waianae. That's where we're seeing the largest percentage. Interestingly enough, we do see youth that want to get out of Waianae. About 17% of our young people in last year actually came from that community. And I speak often about the resiliency. Kailua and Waianae are very different, and for a young person to make that travel, to come all the way to Kailua, it really shows that they really are, they're ready. They're ready. They want to take that next step in their life, and we're going to provide that safe community for them. Ideally, we want to see those young people graduate and move back to their community and help that community heal, right? But it's really, we want to try to get more of an island-wide presence. We are trying to establish ourselves in the Waianae community so that they can have drop-in services, that there can be shelter for those youth that are living all along that coast. Asking them to leave their community is not the Hawaii way that I know, right? We want to keep our young people. We want to help to continue to bring life and vitalization into those young people so that they can be functioning members of their community.
Absolutely.
Back when Mufi was the mayor, Yo had a little mini version of Yo. We called it Yo Waianae. Kipa had an office in Waianae, and we took over the office 3 afternoons a week to do drop-in. But it wasn't as luxurious as the Waikiki Center. We didn't have a shower, we didn't have laundry, we didn't have a medical clinic. It was an office. And we thought, oh, it's right in Waianae, it's Ray's Lock and Key before the Taco Bell. We thought that's perfect because there's youth all up and down the coast, and we're right in the middle. What we found out is it was far from everything. There were a bunch of folks in Maili and then a bunch of folks at kind of Nanakuli, and we were far from both of those spots. And so it wasn't location.
Right.
And so finding the right spot is important.
It is important.
And Carla's absolutely right. Hey, give up everything you know, and even if what is normal to you is kind of junk, it's normal and you know it, but give all that up and move across the island into a shelter. That's a big step that really needs to be honored and appreciated and supported.
Especially for our youth, because even as adults, like, you know, from the adult perspective, like, we don't want to give up where we're comfortable at. You know, home is home. Even if you have to live in a tent on the side of the road, that's where I'm from. That's my roots.
That's familiar,
yes,
right?
Yes. So for our youth to be making that travel from Waianae to Kailua is a huge, I mean, to me, that's courageous, because that's definitely crying out for help. Like, help me, you know, and they're willing to make that effort. Like, we need to be there.
I mean, it would be wonderful if we could go back to, you know, our kupuna, our ike kupuna, when we would care for our own, right, within our own kauhale, our own community. And now it's this, like, not in my neighborhood, you know, we're not going to have that issue there. And, you know, it's sad.
It is.
Because, you know, these are, not only do adults have problems and youth have problems as well, but they're more vulnerable, to me, the way I look at it, you know, and that we're just, go find your way, you know. And I love what you said about the families, Carla, because that's something that I think a lot of people, once again, what you don't know, you make up, right? And people do have that, probably that judgment on the families who ends up having a child that's houseless, right? And that's why we need more family resource centers. Hale Kipa just opened one in
wonderful.
Eva, a family resource center called Hale Kuola, for families who need that kind of support. You know, our target population was really our own young people that we're serving in Hale Kipa. So when the family can't handle it, right, they need a timeout. Okay, we're there to support their young person, but come and seek help. We're also here to help our families so that their young people can be reunited and be in a safe, healthy environment where the families know that they're supported and they have the resources that they need to care for their children. So, yeah, family resource center is really important. Anything else you guys are seeing that's a need right now for this population?
I am excited that, you know, this upcoming legislation is coming, and I'm hopeful that we can get back to the table to have conversations with DHS, child welfare. We still have a number of unaccompanied homeless minors that I know you guys run an emergency shelter, and you know, you keep your beds plenty full, but there is also those gap groups, those youth who are not successful in a licensed child placing facility that need a much lower barrier kind of pathway to be able to start their journey on adulthood. I mean, let's be honest, there is not a real appetite for 16, 17-year-old foster children. And so oftentimes we're seeing these young people that are living completely, you know, unaccompanied. Oftentimes they could be part of homeless families, but the family's not ready to take those steps, but they want to see that their young person is, and that youth wants to come in. And what I am really interested in is how do we create the no wrong door? So if any of us encounter an unaccompanied minor, that there is no wrong door, that we're all going to do the same work in helping that young person end their homelessness. Sometimes 16, 17-year-olds just start that process a little sooner. And that this arbitrary age of 18 is really just a big giant cliff for a lot of our youth. So building those bridges between child and adolescent mental health and the adult mental health system, so that our youth who do need that higher level of care have a bridge now, and it's not just up to the providers to lift them up, that there is that collaboration between state agency and community-based organization. I do feel like we're finally getting some traction there, and that's moving in that direction, that folks are willing from state and private to sit down with each other and talk about how can we really just find that safety net to keep these young people in our care.
Yes, I agree. Anything
I'd like to throw a plug in for more transitional housing. I know transitional housing is sort of not popular right now in terms of the funding, but I think it's vital for the youth young adult crowd, because developmentally they're different. They're not ready to sign a year-long lease, live by themselves. if you think about quote unquote normal youth and young adults, adolescents, they're not living by themselves. They're living in a dorm, maybe if they're in college. They're renting a room in a house with a bunch of other folks. They're still living at home with family.
They're couch surfing.
Well, I don't,
Right.
and so I think a lot of the adult programs are aimed at rapidly putting people into permanent housing as quickly as possible. And I think that's kind of the wrong target for the youth, young adult. Some of them, yes. But I think about, I'm going to be geeky about this, but if you think about the normal distribution curve, bell curve, you have folks at one end, a couple of standard deviations out this way, they can do it. They can live on their own and be by themselves. And you have some folks at the other far extreme who are going to need sort of longer term permanent supportive housing because they have serious mental health issues or developmental disabilities or something, that they're going to need long time support. But the majority of folks, I think, need a safe, stable place to be, to learn and practice life skills, to have a chance to see what it's like, practice being an adult, but have a safety net, because you're not going to get it the first time, right? And so you need
like your FAIL,
you need that.
FAIL acronym, right?
Yeah.
First attempt in learning.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of attempts.
Yes.
And just because I got it today doesn't mean I have it tomorrow. I tell folks all the time that our youth, young adults are just like any other adolescent. They have all of the same adolescent dramas going on, the developmental, I got to rebel, I got to, anything you say is wrong, I'm smarter than you. They have all of that developmental stuff going on. And then they got layered on top of that all of the day-to-day immediate survival needs of life on the street. Where am I going to eat tonight? Where am I going to sleep tonight? Do I have to fight somebody tonight? As well as all of the ongoing trauma. And so we really need a youth, young adult continuum of care that understands that youth are developmentally different. And we need to have that full spectrum.
Now, you bring up a good point, Alika, about the transitional living program, because it is really important. I agree with you, to quickly try and get someone, and I saw you nodding earlier, Lindsay, about, that might not be the best route to just get them housed, right? And
well, get them housed, but not necessarily on their own.
yeah, that's what I meant, on their own.
Yeah.
Right.
So as Alika was sharing, my thoughts is just running off, about independent living programs, ILP, or transitional living programs, which are specifically targeted for our youth, our young adult and youth populations, right? We just don't have enough of them. Even when I was a youth, a troubled youth myself, there was maybe 2 or 3 on Maui, and I think just 2 or 3 here. But that was back in the 90s, Now it's how many do we have? We still need more. And we do have a population that is, like Carla had mentioned, that's stuck in the middle. You know what I mean? It's they're aging out. What do they do next? Where do they go? How do we help them? And the one thing that the one thought that keeps coming back to mind always is, no matter what situations we're faced with, that concept of community and community connection is what's needed. It's what's missing in everything that we do. And and I see this on a broad level, as a state, we're missing that community connection, period.
Absolutely.
Because how can we help solve this if we can't do it as a community?
Right.
You know what I mean? Even especially for our youth. That saying, right? It takes a village to raise a child. It's gonna take our entire community to raise these youth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Lindsay. And remember when we were growing up here? I mean, I was born and raised here, right? And I remember all my neighbors knew my name. They knew who I was. They knew when I was misbehaving. They would call my parents if I needed a place to stay. I could sleep over. I mean, it was community, right? We all cared for each other. Now, how many of us really know our neighbors? Know what our neighbors' children's names are? Right? Who would they call if they saw someone get hurt on the street? I tell you, it's very, very different. We need to bring that sense of community back again. I agree with you. Now, you also mentioned something that was really important. You guys have been talking about what's needed. I want to bring up the fact that community-based organizations are trying to do this kind of work, but at a very low cost contracts, right? Like, I'll give you an example. We would love to have more transitional living programs in Hale Kipa, but we can't even afford to have the one or two that we have because our contracts from the state pays like 50-60% of our contract. And the way that they do it is per bed. But if you're going to put a child in there, you need 24/7 care.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. You have 1 youth, 2 youth, 3 youth, you're going to have 24 hours, 7 days a week care. It does not pay if you only are paying per bed. So I know Carla and I are part of
True Cost Coalition.
you know, the True Cost Coalition. So I'm going to keep saying this, our True Cost Coalition. You know, and we need, and Lindsay, your office reached out to us, and I'm sure you reached out to Alika and Carla as well to get some manao, right? Some feedback on what is it costing us to actually run a transitional living program, right? And all of or our shelters. And you'll see that in our contracts, we aren't getting reimbursed for what it truly costs us to run these programs. So what that means, community, is that we're out here and we are having to fundraise, look for our own money, right, in order to cover the costs to run these programs for our young people. And that puts a lot of time, takes a lot of energy, and we definitely cannot afford to hire a full-time fund developer. And so we're tapping into volunteers, staff time to help us raise those funds, which is a shame because really we're doing the work for our state and we should be compensated for what it actually costs to run it.
And really, it's an investment in the future.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if we can collectively intervene now with the youth and young adult, and they don't grow up to become chronic homeless on the street, high-end system users, we've saved a whole lot of money. And so if we could invest now in making the difference and being that consistent, stable adult presence that provides the connection and the safety and all of that stuff, that'll pay off in the long run.
Absolutely.
I don't have numbers on it. I can't tell you, oh, you'll save this much money, but it'll pay
Just
off
make
in the
up
long
something,
haul.
because 90% of all statistics are made up.
Well, to that
in the
point, though,
moment.
I can tell you to that point that our diversion program that's through the YHDP, we spend about $4,400 per year on each young person that's in that program. $4,400 a year for those 60 youth that we have diverted out of incarceration. It's $250 a day just to incarcerate an adult. So the cost savings, my UCLA math's not very
Right.
good, so I can't do it in my head, but,
okay,
but it's significant. The investment in this young person in a more culturally appropriate,
Setting,
healing
yeah.
centered is much better in the long run for our young people. And it's just getting that message out that there are alternative ways to do it.
Yeah, kind of no-brainer, right? When you think about it.
Yeah, anytime I see how many, almost $1 billion to build a
Right.
new jail,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
do you know
and-
what the community could do with $1 billion
Right.
to address some of these social ills?
I
It's
tell you,
incredible. Yeah.
And I think one of the challenges is that we don't often see the outcomes for the young adults. They'll age out of YO at 22 because that's set by one of our funders. They'll age out of RISE at 24. I mean, obviously, we're going to still work with them and we're going to still track them because they're still ours and we have that responsibility. But their brains are still squishy, developmentally. It's not until 27, 28 maybe. And so the outcomes that we see don't show up real good on the reports, but the difference we make pays off in the long run.
Yeah, Alika's always talking about planting seeds. And this
I mean, that was When you came walking through the door, that was a huge.
You're gonna make me cry.
Sorry, me too. We plant a lot of seeds, and we don't get to harvest a lot of fruit. And so every now and then, somebody shows up
and it's
Yeah.
blossomed, right?
yeah.
Thank you.
And now to give back, right?
Yes.
Lindsay, to be giving back. I mean, what a testament.
Thank you.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people, like you mentioned earlier, that, you know, that helped you along that journey.
Yes.
So, mahalo Alika.
Yes, mahalo.
You know, and Rice for being there to help our young people. Really, really appreciate it. Now we're almost to the end, so I want to give you some time to, if you could speak into the camera, right there, and speak to our community and tell them something that you want them to know as you're working with our young people in this situation. What is it that you want to leave for them to understand?
Who goes first?
And Jakipo.
I will.
Okay.
I pay attention to point in time count numbers. I pay attention to our street outreach numbers, and we've landed somewhere around 300. If we can create 300 beds of developmentally appropriate, affordable housing for young people that we can truly end youth homelessness in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And it's not, that's not tangible in a lot of other states. It's just not. They're seeing thousands and thousands of young people. But I think here, with the models, the transitional housing models that we're starting to create, the wraparound supports, the governor's support for the Hale, that community, I am hopeful. I'm really hopeful that we can get to functional zero and end youth homelessness. I'd like to go play with animals or something for the next part of my life.
300 beds. That's nothing. 300 beds.
Yeah.
You know, think about it. I mean, we without a second thought, we'll build another high-riser, right? To have 300 more visitors be able to come here to Hawaii. Imagine if we invest on 300 beds for a future work development, right? For our young people to be the new workers for our hotel industry. I mean, you know, we talk about it all the time, that our youth are a future. This is how we can show them that they really are, and we invest in their future because we care about them. That aloha, that love that we talk about all the time. How about you, Lindsay?
Somebody once told me, or actually I think I once heard it from somebody else telling somebody else, but bottom line is there was a saying that goes, you know, building homes isn't going to end homelessness. Community will. So we need to work as a community, whether it's homeless youth or homeless adults, just homelessness in general. We need to come back to a centering around community and how important community is to help people thrive and heal from whatever, you know, generational traumas that we are all faced with, you know, regardless if you're housed or not. We all have it. And for me, that's the message I want to leave behind, is that, you know, let's get away from the NIMBYism. Let's stop, you know, saying, you know, I want you off of my street, but I'm not going to allow you to live here in my neighborhood. Like, we need to get away from that. We need to start, you know, remembering, like, what it was like when we were young to be able to go and visit our auntie's house or our neighbor's house down the road and be like, hi, Mr. So-and-so, how are you today? We need to come back to those days.
Right. I agree with you. I agree. And how about you, Alika?
I think my thing is we need to be trauma informed and developmentally appropriate in our interventions. There's no one size fits all to homelessness. There's no silver magic bullet, and we need to take from all of the different interventions and apply those specifically to the youth young adult crowd. And we really need to honor their presence and factor in developmentally they're not ready yet. The brains are still going, and it's going to take time, and it's going to be a lot of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and it's important that I love and support you even if I don't approve of your behaviors, and I see that you aren't your behaviors, and it's important that we're that stable, consistent adult resiliency factor, because that really does pay off in the long run. And if you can be a consistent, stable adult presence for one youth, you've made a difference.
Yes.
And that's gonna make the world better in the long run.
I agree, 100%. Thank you, all three of you, for being here. I think this is such a great conversation that we need to continue to have. I think that it's important for us to support programs like RISE, like YO, and the many others who are addressing our youth homelessness, and also give kudos to our governor and the Office of Homelessness and the work that they're trying to do, and that they're listening. Yes. And I believe that as long as Lindsay's there, they are listening. She's making sure of that. And let's get back to really honoring community, everyone. Our youth depend on us in doing that so much. So I just want to once again give a holler out to our partners, Waikiki Health Center. You mentioned a few.
Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center.
So mahalo for that. And James Kushiba has a huge, kuleana, right, in the Office of Homelessness. So we want to kind of continue to keep track of what's going on, share our mana'o, and please, those of you who have some extra money hanging around, help build us a place for 300 beds. We appreciate it. Maybe Bezos is watching right now, or someone can help support us. Once again, thank you for joining us at Kukakuka. Till next time, aloha, malama pono, ahui ho.